So if you can introduce yourself real quick, and then we can just jump back in.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Norma Ibarra. I'm a skate photographer, and my pronouns are she, her, and I'm originally from Mexico. And yeah, thanks for wanting to catch up.
And we are Tutti Frutti,
Yes.
but you already know that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we were talking about how
In Europe, you were having a hard time progressing.
Yeah, I was having like a hard time progressing because I was being too hard on myself, and I had all these expectations, and it was because I had come out of a abusive relationship like 6 months prior to that. And so I think I was really working on my self-esteem. And so I wanted to be in a place, in a way, to prove my abuser that I wasn't the person that they had made me feel like I was, and that I wasn't nothing. And so I had all of these expectations, like, oh, I wanted to do this and this and that. And I think we all have those, regardless. But it was, for me, it was just so much. It was so much like, I need to validate. I need to prove this wrong. I need to prove to myself. And I think so much pressure, it was like exhausting. And so it became something that, in skating, you have an amazing day, and then the next day, you were like, I forgot how to ollie.
I know.
And so it was upsetting, but I learned from it.
Yeah, and it's something that a lot of us don't really talk about, because I feel like skateboarding, like, like the skateboarding in general, like a lot of people focus on like, oh, landing the tricks, and like so and so are really good skaters, and like a lot of people put a lot of focus on that part of skateboarding, like getting better. But we don't talk about like how everyone has a different journey, like different upbringing. Like some people started skating when they were little and they had very supportive parents that were like, you can do anything you want. Others started really late or grew up in an environment that wasn't empowering. So like they have a lot of mental blocks. If someone wins, like, it's so easy to be like, oh, like this person started skating the same time I did and they're so good now. But it's like, yes, but there's many factors, right? How much time you put, what your upbringing was, like your mentality, like, and like how empowered maybe you were in your childhood, like everything matters. So like for your so like it's important to only compete with ourselves and not compare. But it's hard not to, especially with social media, because we are seeing everybody.
Right. I know. And I think skateboarding,
and you see so much of like the clips, like
yeah,
that's why I love, there's something I love more than seeing videos where I'm just seeing someone fall like a ton of times. I love that. I'm just like, yeah, that's great, because that's me most of the time. Like
I feel like that's
most people most of the time, right? Yeah. But I feel the same way about just life in general, right? We get shown this perception, this very small perception of what people's lives look like, where they're showing the best things always, and they're not going to show off their pain or their struggle.
I mean, even just thinking about, for example, your journey, which I'm excited to hear about, but it's like a lot of people see you as this photographer who is making amazing work and very inspiring and meaningful in this industry. And they don't maybe for a second stop to ask themselves, like, how did you get there? Like how, like what, like sometimes, like, did you even think that you were gonna be in this position? Exactly. And so a lot of times we think of these things as if like they were so pre-planned, and of course they were gonna make it. And so often it's just like, no, I mean, you take risk, and sometimes it happens and sometimes it doesn't, and when it does or it doesn't, you continue moving forward, and it's challenging. And you make it, but it's not like there's like you make it and that's it. Like every day it's like
that's it's funny that you mentioned that, because as you're talking, I'm thinking about how a lot of people are like, Norma, you made it. And I'm like, well, just so you know, like I actually have like 4 jobs. Like I do yes, I use social media on the side. Like I don't live off skateboarding. Like it's maybe now it's gonna be maybe 50-50 of like skateboarding, or photography. And then the other thing I do is like social media. So like I have clients that I run their Instagram and their Facebook, Twitter, or their website.
Right.
But for the longest time, I think because of I'm creating stuff or I'm getting published or I'm traveling, like people assume like, oh, Norma made it. And like, yeah, sure. Like I'm a professional photographer and I have worked with a lot of brands by now, like especially this year. I think I've managed to work with quite a bit of like skateboarding brands, especially the shoe brands, which was one of my goals. But if you go back to like 2018 or 19, I was working hard and I was paying for my own trips. I was following my friends around to get the photos. Like I wasn't hired, but on social media, it just looked like Norma is traveling. Norma is she made it. But I was like on behind the scenes, I'm like,
you're shuffling. You're like
following Fabi, Breezy, Una, and I'm in the hotel, like working, doing my job in the middle of the night. So like in the next morning, I can follow them and try to get photos of them. So like, like people we just see the
product,
the successes, but we don't see like the struggles or like what's in behind the scenes in everybody's lives. And that sometimes can be like, so much struggle of sadness or challenges. Like, and I think it would be cool if we could, sometimes I share on social media, like my friends always know when I'm like not doing well, because I post like inspirational quotes or like sometimes I'm like, I'm not doing well, I'm burned out. But like, I think we're so used to like just seeing everyone so happy on social media, but it's like we all going through struggles, and it would be cool if we could somehow also share those things so that other people don't feel alone, and like, but obviously it's like you're like, okay, well, I don't want to see people being like, I'm so sad all the time, but also it's kind of a tool, right? Social media is a tool.
It's like part of life. And I think, with Tutti Frutti, I think creating this project for us was that, because the core of Tutti Frutti is mental health. And we can't talk about mental health if we don't talk about the complicated parts of life, which is like, it's not realistic to be happy every day. I think most of us, all of us actually aren't. And that's okay. And, it's okay to talk about those things. And so it's interesting what you're saying, because when we went, like last year, we spent 5 months traveling. And it was just like what you were saying, like people would be like, you're living the dream. And we would be like, we are living the dream. But
it's also really hard.
It's incredibly hard. Like, we go back to the hotel and it's like you're saying, we're like editing, we're like sending emails, we're talking to people, we're making sure we can make it, we're researching skate parks so we can visit all of them in cities that we've never been. And plus working on ourselves. And so it was,
because even last year when we were traveling, we were both attending therapy on a weekly basis. So then you have an hour, sometimes you're at a skate park taking pictures, and you got to go run to like a little corner so you can go have your therapy session for an hour,
or like because of the time difference, because the therapy was US time and we were in Europe. Sometimes we would be in a party and I'd be like, I have to go, I need to go to therapy. And it was just it was incredible. It was an incredible journey, but you were absolutely right that sometimes it does feel like people don't get to see that part of, and it is that part that I think is the most important.
And this reminds me too, like I was having a conversation with Kim Woosie once, and she was like, you should talk more about your past, because like it's inspiring, but sometimes like I just get caught on like, what I'm doing now, what are my goals. But you bringing up therapy, I think it's very important too, because that's another thing that I think in skateboarding, like old school skateboarding, I think now this skateboarding that we're part of, we are more open to share about mental health and looking after each other. But I think back in the day, there was so much like, toxicity in many different ways. And just the fact that going to therapy is a little bit more common to talk about, the way that you were saying, oh, I'm working on, oiling up the curve or whatever it is what you're working on. we should be able to also be like, hey, like I'm going to therapy because I'm going through this, but there's still shame on it, or because people are like, oh, I don't want to sound weak, but like actually that you're saying that I just, I'm in Vancouver, that's where I live. I'm in Vancouver for 5 days because I have so many projects right now, and I've been go, and like I just messaged my therapist and like book something for tomorrow, because I need to make sure like I'm still working on my mental health, because being on the road so much and being around a lot of people all the time, and it's amazing. Like I'm a very social person, but I also need that time to like decompress and also like, work on the stuff that I need to work on. Like I'm also, like going through stuff. So like it's also important to share about therapy. I'm actually doing I really like it, so I'm gonna talk about it. I discovered this through another friend that's very into wellness. She recommended this is hypnotherapist. Yeah, and originally when I went to it, I wanted to use it for skateboarding, because in my head I was like, oh, they're gonna be like, you're gonna land it. But it wasn't like that. Obviously, it was like you had this package. There was 3 sessions, and you tested. But basically, what it is like you do go on trance, but it's not like in the movies that they're like it's more like you talk to the therapist, like you share what you want to work on, and then they basically help you put in your brain the things that you might not be able to tell yourself. So in case like I want to work on my confidence, or I want to work on whatever that you're working on, loving yourself, or you're going through like maybe a breakup, letting go, whatever that is that you're working on. And the therapist is really good at like vocalizing the things that I'm having a hard time with, so like you go in this like trance, like I'm sitting on a couch and like kind of like half sleep, half like awake, and she goes through like different techniques now, also like the breathing technique, which is really important. It started with the breathing technique, but then start talking about like basically she starts saying things that, for example, in my case, I noticed that she was saying things that I couldn't tell myself, so that you're putting kind of on your subconscious. Like it's really cool, like I like it. But I must say that now I'm going through a breakup, and like I'm also looking at more like counseling too, because like the hypnotherapist is kind of more in the back end of your brain. But I mean, it's like one-on-one and like talking and strategies of like how to cope and stuff like that.
I don't know if you're into reading, but we always have great book recommendations, especially for breakups.
We have a lot of good breakup books.
So if you're interested, we can send those along, and
yes, please put in the comments below.
Absolutely, yes.
Whenever you're watching.
That's really interesting. I've been to residential treatment, so I've done a lot of different kinds of therapy. Hypnotherapy is something I'd heard about, but never actually like got the chance to try, but I'd be very curious about it. Especially with like, I don't know if you've ever heard of like EMDR, like this very particular kind of therapy that is supposed to work with like PTSD. Yeah, it's called eye movement redirection therapy.
Oh, I heard, yes.
Yeah, and that's kind of also like a form of hypnotism, not in the way that we think of it in like movies and things like that. Yeah, with the little but yeah, like this.
Well, there is a finger. There's like
there is a thing. They do, because they have to move you have to do like an eye movement. But these kinds of things where, because we're getting more open to talking about mental health, like you said, as a society, right? There is more availability for research for things that we've never tried before, things that are kind of coming up, new things. Even like part of why we do like what we do with Tutti Frutti is because there is starting to be research that's showing a lot of positive correlation between like trauma healing and skateboarding, where it's kind of these neurological connections that your brain is making while you're working on skateboarding that are super powerful, super impactful, and we're going to really start seeing a lot more advancements, I think, in general. And I think people have this idea of therapy like you have to be really messed up or whatever, or you have to be going through something terrible, without realizing it's like, well, you don't go to the doctor only when you're like dying, you go to the doctor for a checkup, you try to go as much as you can. And so the same way with like your mental health, it's good to get a checkup.
Unless you're in America, because everything
Unless you're
is
in
too
America because
expensive.
there's no insurance.
So you would try to go never.
but like, right, like in a reasonable world,
Yeah.
you know, we try to check up on our bodies fairly, like at least a yearly basis, you know, and mental health should be the same, because at the end of the day, it's like their mental health has been linked to a lot of very serious physical problems, you
Right.
know, like high blood pressure, a lot of like just cardiovascular issues in general, you know, fatigue, you know, there's so much that happens in your body when your brain is hurting, you know, and I think
It's
that
like the analogy of the car. Like you're when you get a car, like even or a skateboard, even like when you get a car, you like have to switch stuff. You know, you gotta your bearings, or like in a car, you gotta service it. Like our body and our brain is the same. Like, and I feel like I've been with friends and having these conversations where like maybe some of them are not, you know, maybe never tried therapy, and they're like, oh, I can just work on myself by myself. But I feel like even just sharing with friends or doing this therapy can really open up new possibilities and ways of healing, and like seeing what, you know, maybe patterns that we have, or like, you know, things that we do that we might not see because we're like stuck in these ways all the time. So, like, yeah, definitely therapy like can be really helpful. And like I definitely noticed a big change in my life since like I've been doing it. Like I started a long time ago. I started when I was young, because like I was really a shy person. And then when I went to high school, I went crazy, and my mom took me first. She took me to the psychiatrist, but that was the first experience I had. And then I kind of I feel like, I don't know if everyone is like that, but like for me, letting it out is like a big part of my healing. Like talking to someone and like, you know, letting it out. It's like crying too, right? It's your body trying to release it. Like I think for me, talking to people, it's good. But then I also realized I was relying on my friends too much, you know, like whenever you feel sad, you obviously first things you do is like you reach out to your best friend or to your boyfriend, to your girlfriend, like, and then you're like, wait, they are not capable of like, you know, that must be draining for your friends. So like having a therapist is like that, like not talking to someone who is kind of trained for it and has maybe better tools, because if we rely on our friends too much, we're also kind of not helping them. So like
it's like being loving to yourself, but also loving to the people around you.
Yeah, the difficult part here too, though, like that we all have to also talk about is like, yeah, sure, like therapy, but it's like it's not accessible. So like it's
not affordable.
Therapy should be free and for everybody.
It should be free.
Yeah, so that's the other thing. Like, unfortunately, you know, not many of us have access to that. Some people will never go to therapy because it's expensive and they cannot afford it, and like it's pretty sad. So like hopefully we get to the point where like therapy is part of like schooling program or like the medical
where it can really be integrated in a way that makes more sense. Even Issa last year, she kind of went into like a program, like kind of a domestic violence program where they could refer her to a free therapist. It took what, 6 months for you to get referred?
It took a while. I mean, and during the time that I was waiting, I was in therapy, but I was paying for it. But it was like it was quite a process. And that's why I think, you know, with this tour that we're making right now, one of our priorities has been to like reach out to local organizations in each city that provide mental health resources, so they can come to the events and you know, give out these resources to the community, so they maybe
know that there are options,
right? Like maybe some of them are free, maybe some of the therapy is like sliding scale, so there is some sort of like, okay, like you know, there are options. And the thing too is like, because I've been in those positions, and I feel like everybody has been in a position like this where you're trying to find that resource, but you're in such a bad place that you're just like, you don't even know where to start. And then when somebody
to make phone calls,
right,
like,
you're like, oh my gosh, never mind. So it can get overwhelming.
And I still think we have a long way to go with especially thinking about the national suicide hotline in the United States just got relaunched, but but they don't receive training for mental health. They receive training from police officers, and
Which is also
they send out your geolocation so that you can get kind of taken away to a hospital, which is not how you want people to get help, you know, like
it's frightening.
so yeah, it's terrifying, and obviously it's gonna disproportionately impact Black and brown communities. And so, you know, there's so we have a lot of work to do, but I think that talking about it is the first step, right?
Yeah.
Just opening up those conversations of like, this is what happens, and this is, you know, and it matters, but we have to start changing it somehow.
Right.
I'm gonna shift a little bit. I'm kind of curious to know a little bit more about, you were talking about Kim mentioning your kind of past before. I'm kind of curious to know a little bit about that journey before you started skating.
So basically,
Oh, and I want to say, if at any point you want to speak in Spanish, we can do that too. You know,
we'll subtitle everything. So.
Right. So it's up to you.
It's hard to switch, but sometimes I do Spanglish.
That's fine too. That's fine.
I love Spanglish, but then I seem like to jump back and forward, like especially when I'm in events and like I have friends that speak English and Spanish. I start talking in English to my Spanish speaking friends and vice versa, and then it's also messy. But no, I came to Canada in 2009, and it's a long story, but basically like I went through a few traumatic experiences in my childhood and in my teens. Well, not my teens, actually, like I was in my 20s. And I realized that I was just covering in the map, you know, like putting them under the rock kind of thing. And then to the point that I started doing self-harming things that basically put me in hanging out with the wrong people and put me in this, like, I had like a substance abuse problem, like really, really bad. But I'm basically, long story short, like I worked to getting myself clean, and because I went through so much, so I was self-soothing myself with like drug addiction. And I got to the point where it's like, I need help. I'm done. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. And my mom, you know, I was putting my mom in so much pain. She's a single mom, which is another thing that I think I deal with, like that kind of like being the kid of a single mom and having that like
an only child.
Only child of a single mom. Like I met my dad in my life, but like only a few times. Like he was never there. So like I had this like abandonment issues all the time. Like I still work on that. That's something that I always work on my therapy, because it's just like,
I'm actually reading a book about working through abandonment issues. So I'm like doing a bunch of activities every day with like abandonment things, because my dad passed away when I was 17. So I have like,
I would love to read it.
Yeah, I'm gonna send it to you. It's really good. I really like it.
My biggest issues that I need to work on. Like at least I know what they are, you know, but it's like the recurring issue like that I see, and it can apply to your work, it can apply to friendships, and it applies especially with relationships, right? Like not having the paternal figure, and then like being attracted to maybe unavailable partners because your paternal figure or one of your parents weren't there. So like you're kind of like your brain automatically is like, okay, I'm used to this, so like my partner has to be unavailable, like my dad kind of thing. So is that I know that I need to work on, but it's just hard to get out of those cycles. Going back to the conversation, basically, like when I was like on my 20s, like I was dealing with drug problems, and to the point that I was supposed to go to rehab, but at that time I was in school, like I was doing marketing and advertising, and the psychiatrist at that time says like, you're like pretty much touching bottom here, like you gotta get locked down in the rehab place and to get you cleaned up. And I was like, no, I'm so hyper, like I wouldn't want to be locked down, like I can't do this, I don't want to. And they're like, well, what do you want to do? Like, don't you want to get clean? And I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to not graduate with my generation, because I always had like pretty good marks in school, because I always like the presentations or creating like cool things. So like in exams I wasn't like that good, but when it comes to like create a presentation and like do like special projects, I will always stand out, because I would like to do the creative things, you know, like making videos,
as far as you have, really.
The artist part of me will kind of stand out when it comes to like team presentations. So like I was able to do good at school because of the presentation part of things. So I never had like super bad marks, but I was starting to decrease on my school because of the drug problem. But then I was like, I don't want to like go to rehab and then not graduate with my generation. Like it was just the last semester kind of. So long story short, they were like, okay, we're gonna try to do like medication and sessions, like, you know, like just like regular sessions. And we're gonna give you like a test, you know, like, so if you can, like, we'll let you finish your school, but you gotta be really good, you know, like I gotta prove myself kind of thing. But at that time I was already kind of touched bottom, and I was like super tired of like what I was doing to my body. So like I was mentally kind of in a place where I was like, I need a change. So like, and my motivation was I wanted to graduate with my friends. And and I was suffering, like I needed a change. Like I wasn't, you know, it wasn't exciting anymore to like do drugs. It was just like my body was really bad too. And so some, with all the help of like the doctor and like my mom was there to support me. Like I was able to get clean in a few months and graduated.
Wow.
And then after a few months after I graduated, my mom had this opportunity for me to come to Canada for an English course. And she worked at this university where they had like English courses for 5 weeks to come to Vancouver for the students. And one of the students got pregnant and couldn't come. And they had this one spot available for the employees to buy it and pay it on a monthly payment for a whole year. And she was like, I want it for my daughter. She just graduated. And one Friday she just called me and she's like, do you want to go to Vancouver? And I'm like, okay. She's like, okay, I'll put you back. And I'm like,
okay, I'll call you back.
My mom called me, used to say like, if I want to go to Vancouver. At that time, I had a friend who already lived here. She still lives here. He's like my brother now, but like, I was like, sure. And then she calls me again. Okay, you're going on Sunday. So like,
whoa.
Yeah. And I had like a job, like a very shitty job at that time. And I came here with $200. My mom worked really hard, like for a whole year, she was paying it off, you know, like she paid with her job, kind of like this program that was a 5-week program. And I came here with no money, like $200, but it included like homestay and courses and English course and like a bus pass and food. So I didn't really need money, but I was like, I'm not leaving, I'm staying, I need a change. Because being in Mexico close to the people that I was self-harming with was so tempting. Like obviously, like it's not like I got myself clean and I was good. It was more like I got myself clean, but obviously there is relapses and there is like going back, and like having those friendships around you are not helpful. So like for me, I was like, I need a new start. So yeah, I ended up staying here, found a job as a nanny, and I worked as a nanny for like 3 years. And then my Canadian family, I call them, helped me get all the paperwork and mentor me, bought my first camera and pay for, I would work as a nanny and then pay with nanny job, photography courses. And like now they're my mentors, but also my Canadian family. Like I still see them.
That's amazing.
So that's the story behind it. Is like, it's not like, you know, oh, I just was a photographer and that's it. It was like I went through this like rediscovery process and like kind of like started from scratch process, which is like move to a new country and like culture shock too, you know, like new language, but the need of a change for me, the need of a better life, and like kind of more like forget about everything that happened before, or not forget, but like move on from it. Allowed me to like come here and start a new life. And I'm definitely grateful, you know, to be able to be in these traditional lands of so-called Canada, but it's Squamish and Musqueam. I wanted to acknowledge the lands, be able to be here and, you know, pretty much start from scratch. And it wasn't easy, but obviously the quality of life here is way better than in Mexico. So like if you work hard, there's more opportunities, you know, there's more support, there's more like, you know, there's more availability for like progression here, I
Right,
feel like,
social
because
mobility
there's more
and
programming
economic
and like
mobility.
Yeah.
everything, health, arts, culture, like
Right.
even transits, you know, when I hear people here talking about like, oh, public transit in Vancouver sucks, and I'm like, you haven't been in a bus in Mexico City where you're like, oh my god, I'm gonna die, like, you know. So like being like, it depends the perspectives, you know, like of everyone's are so different depending on where you grew up and what was your family like, and like it's just crazy, like it's good to remind ourselves that everyone has such a different mentality and journeys in life. So it's good to also be compassionate and like empathetic, whatever someone is going through, like be empathetic, because I'm always grateful for those people that when I was in my best, they were empathetic for me and like supported me even at my worst, you know, and like allowed me for change, you know. Sometimes we judge people maybe because like they're not doing their best, but it's like they are, but it's like in your eyes, like, oh, they could be doing better, but it's like sometimes that's doing your best, even if for the rest of some other people looks like it's harming, or you know, like there is times where like that's doing your best, you know, and being empathetic of other folks around us is important, and it's part of how we can improve the communities around us.
I was thinking about, you know, what you were saying, and I think it like, it's just like, you know, photography is such an intimate thing, and I think most people realize that because we've all been in front of a lens and we know how intimidating it can be, but maybe a lot of people haven't been behind a camera that isn't a phone. And like I studied film, and so and
I studied
Romina
photography in college. Yeah.
So
so when we started to do the big part was like, okay, we're gonna photograph people. That has to be a huge part of it, you know, like because we both are really into that.
But it's like for us, if you look at our Instagram, so many of the people that we have photographed, I mean, it's been all over the place, but some of those have been like their first day on a board. And it's interesting because they'll come up to us and then they'll be like, oh, but why would you want to take a picture of me? I don't know anything. And for us, it's like, it's the first day that you get on a board.
That's like the most exciting thing.
It's like, I can see anybody like Ollie all the time, but this is so special. And the fact that you would want to share this with us, and like we would want to, like, you know, like just capture this moment is so inspiring. Because getting on that board it's a journey. It's like even getting on it and trusting yourself to, okay, I may fall and I just have to accept that. It's quite a journey. And so, you know, the story that you were telling about how you got to at least the part in Canada, where it was just like so much was like being so vulnerable and allowing yourself to take those risks to see how can you continue to move forward and grow as a person and welcome that change into your life. And I think it's like, you can tell by the photos that you take that the care and like that rapport that you have with the individual in front of your lens.
And even when you talk about this idea of like empathy, I think that there is a lot of this kind of visual empathy that comes with photographing people, you know, especially photographing marginalized people in a community that is just starting to open up to them, you know? I feel like there's a lot to be said. And I think that's why we had originally wanted to talk to you, because we were very interested in this idea of like, we don't see a ton of photographers that aren't white men. It's
in
not,
skateboarding, especially.
I mean, just in general,
the whole photography industry is very male dominated. Well, that's kind of the next part of the journey was that well, going back to Mexico, which is like very macho and you know very like my family, like my mom works so much, so like I grew up with my grandma, so like, and my mom, but my mom will work, you know, 8 to 5 or all day, and then she had like baking to do later at night so she can sell cakes after so she can pay for my school. Like she was working all the time. That's why I'm always working because I saw her.
My mom wishes.
She was working all day. Yeah. So I kind of was in a way raised by my grandma, who was like super protective and not the kind of adventurous grandma. It was more like I would always hang out with her, and like, you know, I wasn't like jumping on trees or anything. So like I wasn't active until I moved to Canada, where I was like, oh my God, everyone's like biking, hiking, kayaking.
Freedom in a way.
So inspiring. I want to do all these things because I never did it in Mexico. So like I in the around the 90s, the end of the 90s, I guess, to 2000s, like I was kind of into punk and in Mexico, and I will go to punk shows and I will see skaters, mostly guys, pretty much guys all the time.
Right.
And it was always something that I admire. But I was never able to be like, I'm gonna take up skateboarding, because my family was like, this is for guys, and like they'll be like, no, and no skate shops, and the whole cultural thing, it felt like it wasn't for me. But I always had it like as something that I will look like. Even when I first moved here, like I would walk by the skate park and kind of look and like be like, oh shit, this is amazing. So eventually I stopped doing the nanny job and I started doing the marketing social media job here, and I moved really close to the skate shop Antisocial, which is owned by a woman, co-owned by Michelle and Rick McCrank. And I got so inspired because I was like, oh my God, there's a girl who runs the shop. And like,
wait, you know
Natalie Porter's friend?
Natalie
Yeah.
runs the woman skate history.
Yeah.
Oh, we talked to her too.
Yeah, with her.
Yeah, it was
great.
She's done some stuff here for the anniversary. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I know her. We all know each other in the
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Or follow each other on Instagram. Yeah, so basically I took up skateboarding at 31, and I broke my ankle learning how to drop in on the first year, and then I broke my other ankle the year later. So I broke in both my ankles on my first years of skateboarding. And at that time,
what did your family say?
They were like, you already broke 2 times, stop. They would keep saying like, are you gonna stop now? And I'm like, no, I'm a rebel.
I'm a rebel. I'm the wild one.
But so at that time, okay, so I've been taking photos since I'm 15 because my mom passed me her film camera. And I would just be the person with the camera in hand. Like I was just taking photos, like group photos of my friends or the parties. Like I always had a camera in hand since that time in Mexico. But it was not until I came to Canada where I was like, wow, Canada is so beautiful. Like Vancouver is so beautiful. Like I want to take photos. Like I just got inspired by the landscape and like all the the cultural shock, you know, everything I saw that I haven't seen home. Like to me, it was something that I would only see in the movies at that time. When I moved here, like I haven't traveled at all. So like maybe when came to once, but like it wasn't, you know, I wasn't travel yet. So like for me, coming to this country was like, whoa, this is like the movies. Also, they film a lot of movies here. So like to me, it's such a like,
it was a film set.
I'm from the desert of Mexico. It's all, you know, dry. There's no much, like it's a small town. So like for me, it was like, oh, I'm actually from like what movies show that Mexico looks like.
Yeah. I see.
Some of the movies, like the desert with the cactus and
it'll be like a yellow lens.
Anyway, but so
I
got inspired by the landscape and like what I saw, you know, like the people watching and everything. But then I was always, and I started taking some courses, but I was like, I'm a photographer, but I don't know what kind. Like, I want to be something, like I want to have a niche, but I couldn't figure it out. And I did some mountain biking too, but I was more on the social media side, like, because for becoming a mountain bike photographer, you pretty much have to be like a pro mountain biker. So you can
be able to
ride your bike with your camera back all the way to the peak of the mountain and get the like shot. So like I did mountain biking events photography, but I wasn't never like, I'm a mountain bike photographer, because I was stuck in that progression of my mountain bike riding. Long story short, when I got injured, like I was a photographer without like a niche. So, but I always wanted to. So I would just be like, I'm a documentary. Like I'm a documentary. I document everything around me. Like that's how I would call myself. at that time. But then when I started skating and I got injured, I realized no one was taking photos of my friends, like, or, the women around me and like the community that I was getting to know here in Vancouver. So it was just organically like for me to be like, oh, this is amazing. I got to document it. And I started taking photos of my friends. And then I met Una and Breezy, and they were just moving here to Vancouver from their hometowns. And like they started to, progress so much and become like a sponsor. So like I started kind of shooting my community here, and as they progress, I progressed with them. And then as they started getting recognition, they were like, do you have any photos? And it was like me, the one around them. So like I definitely, I put a lot of work, but I also think that being here and being close to certain skaters that are now pro and sponsor really helped me like put my work out. On the other side was like I started going back to Mexico, and I went to Cuba, I went to India to document the less known communities. So like I had photos of places that maybe other people don't really go that much. And that was another angle of how I got here, which is like I had a friend who was helping me with like standby flying, and I was like, I'm going to Cuba, and I got these photos that are so unique too. So from communities that, it's not the traditional skateboarding community.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's a mix of like me being like, no one's taking photos of the women around me, and like, and I want to go to all these crazy places like India, Cuba, Mexico. And so it was such a unique, photography, to the point that I recognized there was a lack. And even just the barriers of like the media not wanting to publish the work, or the media not wanting to pay or hire. And I made it my mission to like document those less known communities. And here I am.
So how does it feel to now be able to, for example, go back to Mexico? And I know that I feel like in the last year you had like an art show with your photographs at Vans, maybe?
Well, everything.
At House of Vans in Mexico City.
The first time I did something was in 2019. I was hired by Vans Europe, and I went to Indonesia with Fabi, Breezy, Una, Helena Long, and they did this little cool trip video. And they had, after we came back, we did a photo show with another photographer. Her name is Sarah Parson, and we had a photo show at House of Vans London. I was like, that was the first time I was like, whoa, like my most international photo show. I did one in LA before that with Yeah Girl Skateboarding, which was a collective, like a bunch of photographers in one. That was the first like out of Canada that I did. And then the London one. But then I guess that was 2019, and then COVID happened. I was supported by Vans to come up with a project for their campaign. Yeah, so I made a book about women skaters in Mexico, and I went during the pandemic. Like I went there in November 2020. I spent a month in Mexico and to work on this book, which got published in 2021, and then the book release was in December 2021, because everything was so slow at COVID. So yeah, in my book I use photos that I collected from 2019 and 2020, and it's all women skaters from Mexico, and it's called Para Ti, and it's kind of like a play on words, where it's like, it means it's for you. It's like a book that to let people know that skateboarding is for everybody. So like when they look at it, there's no, I can show you. I think you want me to show?
I mean, it just I'm tripping out because I've seen like the Vans thing of you so many times, and like I'm like, it's like you're doing it live to me right now, and I'm like,
okay, let me
bring the book.
Okay, so here's the
give me the pitch. Give me the pitch.
So basically, like it says Para Ti, for you, and it for me it's like a play on words. So like I didn't want to put one person in the cover. I wanted more like when someone sees this, it's like for me, and then when they open it, for me, oh, this is for me. So like everyone look at the book and be like, it's for me, and then open it, is like, oh, skateboarding is for me. So like in the intro I talk about when I was, this is like all of my Mexican friends.
Oh, that's
That's so
beautiful.
And
amazing.
then like, you know, there's a bunch of like,
Right.
Was
yes.
this is more like, I'm just kind of curious, like, were you really the person, like, did you have a team helping you, like, with the actual layout? Was it really just you? It was all you,
it
like,
was all of my photos and all of my, I did the layout. I kept it really simple. If you look at it, like it's just like full
no, but
page.
people underestimate how hard it is to lay out photos.
So
Yeah,
hard.
because I
Because-
took an entire class just on photo books, just on like putting your photos in a book. That's a whole thing, you know, like.
And I had a timeline. I had a timeline too. Like, oh, this photo, a lot of people love this one. You see the ball and like how like
Yes,
the
Oh, wow.
yes. Ah,
so it's basically, yeah. So Vans did a campaign that it was called Ads for Creativity, which was
Yeah,
basically
we
we
actually
won the
won it
second
too.
wave of it. Like they did like a second, and we won.
I haven't
That was
seen it.
well because it hasn't. I don't know.
It
If
hasn't
I don't
come
know
out.
if it's gonna come out
Like, I don't
necessarily.
know.
They gave us money. We
Like,
sent them
yeah.
the video, and then we
Yeah,
kind of just
and
are
we
waiting.
wanted for making we
Finger
make
boards.
finger boards, and they all of them, like we hand make them and we design them, and they all have like healing kind of affirmations and positive affirmations and
That's so cute.
grounding things.
I want one.
Oh.
Let us know, we'll send you
Let's
one.
trade. I'll
Yeah,
trade.
yeah, we can
Yes,
trade.
yes,
Yes,
absolutely. We'll pick one just for you.
Okay, perfect. Now you know. Now that you know lots about my
Absolutely,
background,
yes,
you know
yes,
what- where.
yes.
But yeah, so basically it was part of this campaign, and when they approached me, I was like, as a photographer, I think the most rewarding thing is either see your photos on print or see your photos like printed
Right,
really
like,
big,
wow,
yeah.
it's like-
whether it's a show or whether it's like a billboard, you know, see it tangible, especially with
Right.
like how photography is digital mostly now. I mean, people does film, but for me it's like I do half and half, but like just seeing your photos tangible somewhere, I think it's the most rewarding thing. And as a photographer, I think a photo book is kind of a really good achievement. And also my mom used to be a librarian, and
Oh.
after my healing journey, I always felt like, oh my God, I made my mom suffer so much. Like, I think one day my original plan was I'm gonna write a book because she has such an interesting story, and then add all the shit that I made her went through. It will be a cool book, you know, like it's focused on her, but also me as a daughter and like everything that I went through and made her suffer. Like I thought it could be a good novel, and I still think about it, and I think it'll be cool to write a book, but I'm not a writer, so who knows, it will happen. But then when Vance was like, what do you want to do, just pitch us a project, and I was like, instantly I was like, book. And then the second thought was, I started skateboarding in Canada, and I feel so privileged to be here and to have all these opportunities because I'm here, because I'm close to all the connections, and I have privilege just
Right.
but in many ways.
Right.
And I was like, I want to give back to my community. So I was like, what can I do? Well, shed the light on my Mexican community. So yeah, I wanted this book to be focused on them, only Mexico. So like I used the photos from 2019 and 2020. And then yeah, so that was what you were talking about. After that, in 2021, the book was released, and they opened up a new house of Vans in
Right.
Mexico City.
Yeah.
Which
for
looked
the-
amazing.
Yeah.
Like,
we're
wow.
definitely gonna go at some point, like without a doubt.
Well,
'Cause we
first
love
of
Mexico.
all, okay, first, that event, didn't Molotov, didn't they play?
Yeah, they did. They did. I was like thinking, because I've been through so many events, I forget which one. They play the weekend after.
I remember on Instagram, and I was like, oh my God, this looks amazing. And now why am I not in Mexico?
Japanese breakfast too. They had a whole
Japanese breakfast.
Yes, it was
Yeah.
so good.
I'm actually curious to know how was it to go back to Mexico when you're, because you're shooting and everything, and like you talked about, when you left, it was kind of like, I got to get out of here. Like, this is gonna, like, this is not gonna end well. Then you have to go back, and it's a totally different story, I'm sure. Like, it feels different in some ways, feels the same in some ways. I'm curious to know more about that.
Well, I've been here for 12 years. So like when I moved here at the beginning, I didn't go home for 2 years. And I remember spending Christmas with my Canadian family the first year. And then the second year, my mom came and I was like, oh, I don't like Christmas here. It's too sad. Like, it's just too simple. Like in Mexico, there's parties for like a whole month. Like, everyone hangs out and like, it's just very different. Like in here, it's just like dinner, wake up, open the presents, bye. And that's how I felt for me. But in Mexico, it's like from December 12th to January 6th.
Yeah, it's parties all day.
I mean, I'm from Colombia, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
People has that, like, it's called the marathon Guadalupe Reyes. So starting the Lady of Guadalupe and ends on like Three King Day, which is the drink all that. I mean, I'm not into that, but like that's when everyone is like festivity kind of mind. So yeah, then after that I tried to come home every Christmas for like almost 10 years or 8 years or so. I lost count. But then when I had the support for the flights, I started going back home because I was like, I wonder how skateboarding is in Mexico. So in 2017 I started going for Mexican events, and people were like, who's this person? Because at that time I was already kind of shooting with Breezy and Fabi, and it was kind of Mexicans were confused because I came out of nowhere as a skater, but I was already a skate photographer in Canada. So people were like, who's this person? And she's older. Like people were like, who is she? Like, because I'm also from northern Mexico, but the scene is bigger in Mexico City. So I was going to Mexico City to meet everyone there and to document it. Like I was very passionate about meeting the Mexican skate community. So like, it was amazing. Like I basically there was a year that I went because I had flight support, like a very cheap flight opportunity. I went home for like maybe 3 times in 2018. Like I was going for like Mexican events. So like I love Mexico. Like I try to go once a year. In the last 2 years, I haven't because COVID. So like I was there in November for like a whole month to work on the book. And then I went to my hometown for 3 days in 2020. And then I haven't been home. So I'm hoping to go this year for sure. So it's always amazing to go home. Like I love it. But I'm also like, I try to do something when I go there. I feel this like responsibility kind of to like be like, I have what I have here. How can I support there, even though I'm here? And like maybe the learnings that I get from here or from working with Skate Like a Girl, like having so many mentors here. How can I implement some of my learnings through all my travels and work in Mexico? So I'm actually going back in December because we got I'm part of the organization You Can Skate in Mexico.
Yeah. But they got funded by the Good Push or something like that, or Skate.
Exactly. So we're gonna do like a workshop for in one of the indigenous community, like teach kids how to skate. So we got the anti-racism grant. So we're gonna do a workshop there in December or January. So I'm gonna be there in December doing that. So as I say, like I just love going to Mexico all the time. I always wanted to live in Mexico City for a few months, but that hasn't happened. Hopefully one day. But something that I also kind of don't talk about, but I think it's, since you like about mental health and all that, something that happened with the book that was really crazy. Well, not with the book, but like this book is like dedicated to my mom, but also when I went to, and my dad and my grandma. But this is something crazy that happened. Like it was really hard to work on this book because I have to backtrack, but my dad wasn't there for me. But he's way older than my mom, and I always had this resentment because he wasn't there for me. And I keep thinking, oh, I want to get rid of this. How can I do that? And then I started thinking, my dad is so old, one day he's going to die. And if I don't see him, I'm going to feel really bad. Even though he never looked for me, I think I have to look for him. So in December 31st of 2019, I contacted I have a half sister, and I contacted her and I say, hey, like, can you tell my dad that I want to see him? I'm in Mexico and I want to see him. Like, tell him, like, because I usually will be mad at him, when a few times he tried to get back with my mom, and like I will be mean to him because I was younger and like resentful. But I was like, can you tell him that I want to see him, all friendly, nothing, good vibes only kind of. And in December 31st of 2019, after 15, he hasn't seen me for 20 years. No, he hasn't seen me for 20 years, and I haven't seen him for 15 years because I saw him once when I donated blood, but he was unconscious because he had a procedure. So I haven't seen him in 15 years. And in December 31st, I remember it was the last day of the year because I spent the whole night after just sleeping. It was so emotional. I saw him, and I came to see him, and first thing it was like we hug each other, and he apologized, and I just
everything came out.
Yeah, like I just cry and hug him, and we became friends. But after that, it was like, I'm gonna cry.
I'm like about to cry.
So yeah, like I forgave him. I forgave myself and forgave him, and then looked for him because I was like, I don't want him to die, and like had this accumulated resentment and that I've been having my whole life that is probably affecting my relationship with partners and everything. So it was a really good thing that I did for both of us. Like we did, like I looked for him and we kind of bonded, and like we kind of closed that cycle. And then the pandemic hit, so we were just kind of once in a while, we were pandemic friends, like I would call him on the phone, and like you can tell that he obviously was happy because we were friends, that we never were friends before. In like I'm 38, so like that happened when I was 36, 37. Yeah, so it was a crazy thing. But what happened was that when I came to Mexico in 2020 for November to work on my book, I got to Mexico City and I had to quarantine, and my grandma passed. Just as I landed to Mexico City, my grandma passed, and I'm supposed to be in southern Mexico to work on this book for a month. So
this is 2020 now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I saw my dad the last day of 2019, and then the whole pandemic, we were friends talking on the phone. I was in Canada, he was in Mexico. Then end of 2020, I came to Mexico to work on the book, and my grandma passed on the first week as I got back to Mexico after the pandemic. I mean, it's still pandemic. And I couldn't see my grandma. My mom is like, go work on your book. Whenever you're done, come see us. Like, your grandma is gone. Like, it's okay if you don't come for the funeral. I just basically, before she passed, like, she was kind of not unconscious or something, or not talking, but I just talk on the phone and say goodbye to her. And it was really difficult because I was working on this book, grieving my grandma's stuff. But then what happened later, that a week later, we are in Nayarit, my dad passed.
Oh my goodness.
So this book is like, it's the
thing that kept you going pretty much.
Yeah, like it's so many emotions for me, like just to make this book, like I made a book when the same month that my grandma and my dad passed, and I couldn't come to their funerals. I was just working on the book, and it's a very special book, but it's also, it was hard. It was really hard. But I'm proud, and it's dedicated to them, and yeah, that's the story of the book. It's just pretty heavy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the reality is people don't think about the fact that I don't know, grief kind of comes at these weird times. Yeah. Look, I got a tear. I got one tear. There it is.
My last.
Because I look back on like the really points of grief in my life, and it always feels like it's like, God, that was just the time, right? Just had to be at that time, right? Like,
but it's never a good time.
When is there ever a good time for death?
Like, never. So you're always gonna say, this was not the time.
Yeah.
But it's never gonna be the time.
But in some ways, I feel like maybe we don't realize that it is the right time, right? Because if you hadn't had such a tether, right? Something, it was like, well, I gotta do this though. Like I have to do this. I have to stay on track. I have to keep doing this. Then, we sometimes forget, like, maybe I wouldn't have been able to get through it if I hadn't had something really grounding me in that moment, right?
And it's like, even, when you were telling this part of the story, I kept on thinking about my life, because when I came to Chicago to do my master's.
When you started skating with Fro Skate too.
Right.
It was right when you started skating.
I had this idea for a whole thesis and it fell apart because my grandma passed away that summer. And my grandma to me, she's like my everything. And she's always been, and even though she's gone, like she still is. So when that happened to me, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't go to Colombia. It's too much. She was going to be part of my crew, and it's just too much. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing for my thesis anymore. And it's interesting because I started skating with Fro Skate, and then a couple of weeks later, my grandma passed away. And so for me, Fro Skate became like that one time of the week where I was like, I feel supported, I feel seen, I feel like so welcome, I feel important, and I didn't have to think about my grandma for those hours because of course I was grieving and I was just a mess and it was too much. But it's interesting because then my thesis became about my grandma. And
Wow.
and I made this whole film. And it was also it really became, it started about trying to understand my mom's dad who was abusive, and I had all of this resentment. But I had no relationship with him, and now I realized that I had taken this generational trauma and made it my own. And so the film started to become started to be that, and then I was like, you know what, the important person here is my grandma. And it really became about her. And so when you talk about this book, I feel that, like I feel how something can be so important and at the same time represent also so much pain and grief and so much of yourself. So it's just like amazing, to that you were able to have this opportunity to have something so tangible that represents that moment of your life.
For sure.
And that you open it and you see these faces and they're your friends.
Yeah, for sure. It's super meaningful in many ways, as I say, like, not only it's for like shining a light on the Mexican community, but also for anyone who sees it. And it's just the message that I'm trying to portray always with my photography is that skateboarding is for everybody. So like it's not always about the tricks, it's more about like inclusivity and like representation. So I always try to take photos of all my friends, and like especially actually I'm still not, I don't think I can talk about it yet, but I'm working on a new project which is a video project. Stay tuned. And it's about that, like it's not about obviously we have to celebrate the progression and the tricks.
Yeah. But I feel like it's not always about what you do, but how you do it, right?
Right.
So basically, yeah, this book is very special. I'm like, I'm gonna be shorter now because we have 7 minutes.
Okay, since we have 7 more minutes, anything that you absolutely would like to share about the work that you're currently doing or that you wish to do, or really anything that you want to share. What did you do today if that's important to you? Like, I don't know.
Well, I think in the last few months also I've been doing a lot of trying to get more involved with like the community groups. So for example, here we have Nations KUs and Takeover Skateboarding, and I'm really proud of this one. I work on like indigenous photography skate photography series that's showcasing at the Museum of Vancouver. And what I did is like I reached my friend Tristan Henry, who is indigenous from Canada. We did a photo series called Skate for Change, and it showcases indigenous skaters from Turtle Island wearing their regalia. So kind of like, yeah, and that's in a museum. So like, I don't think I ever did it was the first time I had something exhibit at the museum. So like that was really, I had one photo in a Berlin museum, but like a little one. This one is the whole.
That's amazing.
That's something I'm really proud of. It also came with a video that I made. That one you can find on Vimeo. I can maybe pass the link for. It's here until October.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's something that I'm really proud of, and I think something that I've been working personally on, like kind of like learning about my identity and like all the intersections that I touch as a mixed person from Mexico
Oh, of
that's in
course.
Canada. So like trying to understand, you know, who I am and how can I use that as a tool and platform to elevate other folks, you know, and do meaningful work. So that's something kind of that I've been working on, especially in the last few years, you know, because like I think when the Black Lives Matters movement started, and there was a lot of also like Indigenous Life Matters and here in Canada, and I started kind of questioning my identity of who I was and like what means to be mestizo, and like am I Indigenous and I'm not, and like but I'm so pale. So like that's something that I've been really working on lately, understanding my identity and my privileges as well as my struggles, with how can I, you know, acknowledge that and then take some action that can be good for the community, especially in the work I do. So that's something that I wanted to share. And yeah, like shout out to all my mentors, like as I say, like the folks that take over skateboarding and Nations K Youth like have been a huge inspiration for me here. And yeah, like there's some stuff coming out with Frostgate too that I'm so like excited, and I'm honored that I get invited for that. So stay tuned as well. So yeah, I'm happy. Like I'm doing the things I wanted to do. Like this was a dream, you know, like at some point I wrote it on I have a magic board, and I wrote it that I wanted to be doing, you know, international stuff with my camera and my skateboard, and it's happening now. Like I planted a lot of seeds and I did a lot of, you know, hustling, and I can see now things are sprouting and like there's like things happening. So I'm really excited for that. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm kind of been working on, as well as I recently got invited to shoot the first Olympic qualifier.
Yes, I saw that. That was awesome.
That's amazing.
And the Olympics posted my pictures, and I was like,
so that's amazing.
That's so beautiful.
Like congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations.
Wow.
Congratulations on everything, on your whole journey.
I'm working my way to the Olympics, hopefully.
Yes. No, and you'll definitely get there. And like, you know, I hope you know that I know you do, but I will remind you anyways that your work is so inspiring, and to so many, you know, I can say this for myself, and just like everything that you've done for the skating community is incredibly it's just incredible, and it means so much. I look up to you. You inspire me. Your photographs inspire me. Your story inspires me. And I think, you know, when we live in a society that often tells you that if you don't have a regular job, whatever that means, you are kind of lost. I look at people like you who are challenging what that means. And I'm like, you know, like I have a place in society doing things that I love, because there are people out there who come from places similar to where I come from and have made it work for them. And now I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful for allowing yourself to take those chances and growing into the person that you are, that now we can see and be inspired by.
Yeah. Thank you. And yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Like, and I do have to remind myself, because sometimes you just get kind of like, what's next? But I'm like, sometimes I have to even just talking to you about it, it's like a refresher. It's like, damn, like I've been through a lot, and like I'm doing well, you know.
That's why, for example, things like therapy also help. Sometimes you'll just go through your life and you're like, yeah, whatever, and then you talk about something and you're like, God, whoa, you're like, damn, my life's been hard.
Actually, but
we're a survivor. Yeah, I'm a survivor.
And thank you so much for. I just feel like the call is gonna cut, but thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I want to be able to stop the recording with time, so I want to say thank you so much for sharing with us and for talking with us.
Thank you. I kind of want to keep talking.
No,
Hey, I mean, listen,
we're not like
you,
busy, but we can
you have,
we can stop the recording too.
I gotta
like,
work.
at any
We
point.
also have to work.
Yeah,
Actually.
but if you ever want to have a conversation about anything, like
we're here. Yeah.
we're here for
Hey,
anything.
come to Canada.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we are actually gonna be
Yeah.
there, but only for like a day. So.
Okay, well, let me know. We'll keep in touch.
Yeah.
Yes. And if you ever want to go to Miami, let us know.
Yes,
We're
I
out
want
there,
You have places to stay.
yeah, we got people for you to photograph. too.
Yeah.
Yes, I want to come. It's on my list.
Well, let us know,
Yeah,
let us
keep
know.
us updated.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thank you so
Gracias.
much.
It was nice to talk to you.
Wishing you a good day.
Yeah. Have a great
Thank
day.
you. All the best to you too.